Fact or fool, Texas running back Jonathon Brooks is already a top 8 Dynasty running back. All that and more this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $200 if your bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. On today's show, in the spirit of April 1st, April Fool's Day, we're going to do a little show called Fact or Fool. We're going to give you 3 very spicy Dynasty takes, and we're going to debate whether it's a fact or a foolish take. So, Kate, I will go first. My first one. Texas running back Jonathon Brooks should be a top 8 Dynasty running back right now.
This is a very, very spicy one. Marcus, I'm going to tell you right now, we haven't even done our preview here on Texas running back Jonathon Brooks. We're going to get to it here in the coming weeks. But I mean, I got to say, generally speaking, the data, the advanced stats, despite coming off a torn ACL, generally backs your take. But I think people are going to have a little bit of hesitancy buying in because this is a weird running back class where there's not really a consensus top guy. My only argument to that is that Jonathon Brooks is the top guy. He's got a gimpy knee right now. He's rehabbing, coming back from that torn ACL. If the torn ACL had never occurred, Jonathon Brooks would, in fact, be the RB1 in this draft class, and I think he'd teeter on first-round draft capital.
Yeah, I mean, and even if he didn't go in the first round and he was, let's say, a top 45 selection, we've seen running backs in recent history go from, a top 50 pick all the way up to Dynasty running back RB1. Like, I think a perfect example of this is Breece Hall. Is Breece Hall significantly more talented than Jonathon Brooks? Probably not. I mean, I think he's a better athlete, but I just have a feeling with the way that everybody's ranking Jonathon Brooks right now, where he's the consensus RB1 in this class, he is going to get that second round draft capital. And there's a couple teams that are in desperate need of a running back, including the Dallas Cowboys. If the Cowboys, we're just going to use them for an example, draft Jonathon Brooks with their second round pick, I've got a feeling, Kate, top 8 is going to be low. Like I could easily see a situation by the time we get to August, he's a top 5 Dynasty running back, and we're ranking him ahead of Jonathan Taylor, ahead of Kyron Williams, ahead of Travis Etienne. I think it's regardless of his landing spot right now. I think he is a top 8 Dynasty running back, and you can make a case that he should be even higher than that.
Let's talk about the makings of a top 8 Dynasty running back. Marcus, what gives Jonathon Brooks the edge over some of the other close players that we'd be ranking in a similar range? What makes Brooks a top end running back for you?
Well, first of all, the age. He's 20 years old, right? And there's just not a lot of baby. And there's just not a lot of wear and tear on the tires. And I know he's coming off an ACL injury. That's concerning. But he played behind Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson. Like, there's just not a lot of career touches. And maybe that's concerning as like coming out as a prospect, but it's not concerning from a Dynasty perspective. This is actually great news, right? We've seen young running backs bounce back very quickly from a torn ACL. Actually, there's a running back in this class that has had a more significant knee injury that has a chance to be drafted ahead of Jonathon Brooks, and that's Trey Benson. Like, these running backs at this age can really bounce back from it. We want the guys that are going to, be fresh by the end of their rookie contracts when they're 24, 25, 26, so they can get that second deal like a Saquon Barkley, like a Josh Jacobs, like a Tony Pollard. I just think because of the talent, because of where he's going to land, and because of the age, there's really no reason not to buy into Jonathon Brooks.
And you mentioned the relatively small sample size because he played behind Bijan Robinson. He played behind Roshan Johnson. There's not a lot that you can say well, why didn't he earn playing time? He didn't earn playing time because he had a generational running back playing right in front of him. When he finally got the reins and he got the full-time job, he definitely excelled. 91st percentile in PFF rushing grade in 2023, 95th percentile in missed forced tackles per attempt, 82nd percentile in yards after contact per attempt, had the receiving stats to back it up as well. There wasn't any holes to Jonathon Brooks's game, and I think that that's going to translate very well to the next level in terms of a true 3-down capability skill set.
I'm all in. I think he's an incredible player. And I just think his size and his speed makes him one of these backs that's going to be on the field all the time, Kate. And that's valuable. So when you combine the 3-down skill set, the age, the lack of workload, I have a hard time putting somebody like Jonathon Taylor, who, again, he's not old. He's 25 years old. But Jonathon Taylor has now multiple years of some injury concerns. Not really a receiver out of the backfield. I've got some concerns about the touchdown upside now that Anthony Richardson's there. I would just rather get the running back that's 5 years younger. And I know this sounds weird coming off as a guy that has a major knee injury, but I just trust Jonathon Brooks' health a little bit more than I do Jonathon Taylor right now.
I mean, Jonathon Taylor, he has played 18 games over the past 21 games over the past 2 seasons. Again, just because he's young doesn't mean he doesn't have some decent mileage on the tires, and obviously more mileage than we see coming off of Jonathon Brooks. I'm going to rate this as a fact and not a fool. This is not April Fool's Day. In fact, if you are watching this show on YouTube, we're debunking the fool.
I just want to also say that Jonathon Brooks is one of the biggest values in your startup drafts right now. We touched on this on Wednesday's show with Matt, but as of right now, his overall ADP is 87. He's being drafted as RB 24. That is insane. He should, at the very minimum, be a top 12 Dynasty running back. And if you want to get wild like Kate and I are, rank him inside your top 8. If you want to get really wild like I'm considering doing, rank him inside your top 6 or your top 5 running backs. Yeah. Let's get spicy. Okay. That was just a little appetizer to warm you up for the entree here, which is Trey McBride, who has risen way up our Dynasty rankings. Is he a little bit overrated? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The sports calendar is loaded, and FanDuel is making it even more exciting to get in on the action because right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 that you can use to bet on the college basketball tournament. MLB, our Pirates are 4-0 right now. NBA, NHL, and so much more. I can't wait to watch Iowa versus LSU tonight in the women's side of the bracket. So much fun. Maybe the most anticipated non-Final Four game in women's college basketball history. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet a big win with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. So we want to let you know about Locked On Sports Today. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? And are you having to turn down the volume because of all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that unnecessary screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Kate, let's talk about Trey McBride, the third-year tight end now, who had a really strong sophomore season with the Arizona Cardinals. What's your read on this situation?
really strong sophomore season. Like you couldn't have asked for much more, but really became the focal point of the Arizona Cardinals offense entirely. Posted 81 catches, 825 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns, and saw a
Big rise.
a really big rise in his dynasty value. If you're watching along with us on YouTube here, we have the chart showcasing his value. I mean, since the month of November, climbed, and climbed a little bit more. At this point in dynasty startup drafts, he is being drafted in the late 3rd, early 4th round of dynasty startup drafts. And I'm gonna say, like, I understand there was a lot to like about Trey McBride's second season. I mean, heading into the year, he was being drafted somewhere between like tight end 18 to tight end 22. You're gonna love that value, and if you did, you know, have a Trey McBride share and got to see that giant rise in his value, I'm gonna say I think it's the time to sell. And I'm not saying that I don't like Trey McBride. That is not at all what I'm saying. So I want to be extremely clear about that because, again, there's a lot to like about his game. He's a awesome athlete. You saw a lot of his ability to showcase speed. But Marcus, I do think we're a little bit overlooking the fact that, like, was Trey McBride a focal point of the offense because he became the focal point of the offense, or was it because there were no other focal points of the offense to be seen? And that is my question. So, like, look at his advanced stats. Generally speaking, yards per route run, a very sticky stat, which we love, 98th percentile. But that's really the only standout metric for him. Contested catch percentage, 95th percentile among tight ends last year, but not necessarily a sticky metric that you're going to see a lot of consistency from year to year. It's not necessarily a predictive stat. 58th percentile in PFF receiving grade, 56th percentile in separation percentage. Has the second round draft capital, but I do have a lot of concerns that a big part of his significant involvement was due to the fact that there weren't a ton of options there. Week 8 on, average 8.5 targets per game, just over 11 and a half fantasy points per game. Average as the tight end 6 in fantasy points per game in that span.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's great, but I don't know that I'm looking at Trey McBride as a particular standout in any single metric or, from in terms of athleticism. I think when we see probably Marvin Harrison Jr. come in and we have a true wide receiver 1, I think fans are going to be pretty disappointed that maybe Trey McBride is a little bit more volume based than we would like.
All right. So before I rule on this one and whether it's a factor or fool, I want to get your
I already
thoughts
know
on this.
you're gonna. I already know I'm gonna be a fool. It's fine.
No. Hold on. How many tight ends would you take over Trey McBride in your dynasty leagues? Because we have Sam Laporta as tight end 1, Trey McBride currently being drafted as tight end 2, Mark Andrews tight end 3, Dalton Kincaid tight end 4, Brock Bowers tight end 5.
I'll take Sam Laporta. I'll take Mark Andrews, Dalton Kincaid, Brock Bowers, probably Kyle Pitts, and that might be a spicy one at this point, and TJ Hawkinson.
All right, so that's where I come in and say you're a fool. I think he should be a top 5 dynasty tight end. And if you want to take Bowers, who I have ahead of McBride, or Dalton Kincaid ahead of McBride, I get it, because you're still taking a really young tight end on a good offense. So, like, completely understand there. I just struggle with the Hawkinson one now that Hawkinson's coming off a major knee injury. We don't think he's going to be ready for the start of the season. We have no idea what the quarterback is going to be there. They already have, 2 really good weapons in Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. I have McBride as a top 5 dynasty tight end, and I think he's closer to number 1 than he is to number 5 for me. Okay, we have to remember, like, just how bad this Cardinal situation was last year. Remember, like, the game where Clayton Tune was starting against the Browns and they had negative yards of offense going into the first half? that game. Josh Dobbs started the first half of the season. You're right to be concerned, like when Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors comes into this offense, what's McBride's role going to be? I understand that, but I just think he's a really good player who can make plays after the catch. You saw the ADOT on that chart. I believe was it 26th percentile, Kate. To me, that's a little bit more of a quarterback stat. I think that got better when Kyler Murray re-entered the lineup. The yards after the catch per reception, 71st percentile. He gets open. He catches everything. I'm still in on Trey McBride. I'm still willing to pay the price it is to go get him. So I lean more
So
foolish, but it's not crazy. It's not
you're
crazy.
buying like I just think tight end 2 is so rich. Like I just think you're looking even like there for all the prospects behind him. Like Dalton Kincaid, I'll still consider like a relative prospect, right? Brock Bowers, no question to me whatsoever. Like
I agree.
Kyle Pitts, younger than Trey McBride. Like I understand that, you know, maybe like for if we're gonna use circumstances as a you know savior for Trey McBride and you know as
But he was also productive last year, despite the circumstances being really bad.
he was, but he also was like the only living, breathing body on his team. Again, I'm not saying that I don't like Trey McBride. If Trey McBride's value was, again, maybe closer to tight end 5, tight end 6, I'd be all in. But I do think that, like, you know, I don't understand it based on the collegiate production. He's never been a big touchdown guy. He's never had more than 4 touchdowns in a season. Final season with Colorado State, 1,100 receiving yards. Awesome. 1 single touchdown in that season. And I don't know that we're going to see a whole lot change here at the next level, especially if we start introducing other options in here. And yeah, I'm out at that price tag.
I want to ask you something right now. Is Matt Vallis the quarterback that was throwing Trey McBride the football at Colorado State, or is he my local mailman?
Probably closer to your local mailman.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not too worried about the touchdown production in college. And like Clayton Tune's going to join that guy in being my local mailman soon. Like it's just not that big of a deal to me. I think the quarterback play in Arizona is going to be able to support multiple weapons this year. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride can both survive in that ecosystem. So I'm fine. I understand why you're down on him. I'm not saying you're 100% a fool, but
I don't necessarily want to say like that I'm all out. It's
you're just out at
I'm
the
out
price
at that
tag.
price. Yes.
Okay. I guess for me, like I look at somebody like Mark Andrews, who's being drafted in the similar range, like a couple spots difference. And to me, they're not close. And I understand that, like, I have Bowers ahead of Trey McBride, and I probably would have Kincaid and Laporta as well. I just like all those players at their respective price tags. That's all.
Fair enough.
Okay. Don't hate me for my love of Trey McBride. All right. I got a really, really spicy quarterback take that I can't wait to hear your thoughts on, Kate, because I'm sure I'm wrong on this one, but I don't care. I'll be loud about it. Let's get to that one next. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. What's the first thing that you do if you had an extra hour in your day? Would you go for a run? Would you take a nap? Would you read a book? Would you show up for a friend? A lot of us spend our lives wishing that we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so that you can go and do more of it. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for any reason at no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Just visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. On tomorrow's show, We're going to be breaking down Texas wide receiver Xavier Worthy, one of my favorite prospects in this class to watch. But what is his dynasty value moving forward? We will discuss that. So make sure you tune in to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Kate, our last factor fool here is Joe Burrow. When we were texting this morning, I said, I don't think Joe Burrow is a top 5 dynasty quarterback. Now, you can argue with that or not. He's being drafted as a top 5 quarterback right now, QB5. And I thought about it and I thought about it. That's not spicy enough. I don't think Joe Burrow is a top 10 dynasty QB right now.
Whoa.
In fact, I don't think it's all that close to me. This has nothing to do with Joe Burrow's ability because I think he's an unbelievable player. Maybe for me, my favorite quarterback in the league to watch right now. I think he plays the quarterback position maybe better than anybody else outside of Patrick Mahomes. But I've got real concerns about his dynasty value from all of the injuries. I don't know what's going to happen with T. Higgins long term. The rushing production is obviously going to go down as he gets older. He's been kind of a rushing threat in terms of like touchdowns over the last couple of years. I can't trust them to stay on the field. If that's the case, and I'm not getting a lot of rushing production anymore, there's just several other quarterbacks, including Anthony Richardson, Caleb Williams, Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud that I'd rather have instead of Joe Burrow right now. So is this a foolish take for you?
No, I think Joe Burrow might be one of the biggest mismatches in terms of like NFL play versus dynasty value. I mean, Marcus, over the past 3 seasons combined, Joe Burrow has ranked 93rd percentile or higher in clean pocket grade, standard drop back grade, first and second down grade, no play action grade, throws at or beyond the sticks, avoided negatives, under pressure grade, third and fourth down grade. Like the list goes on and on and on. There is really no metric that Joe Burrow doesn't top in comparison to other passing quarterbacks around the league, but he's definitely more of a pocket passer than necessarily like a run first rushing threat, which
Yeah, he's not a rushing threat.
He's a big, like he can, and let's be clear, I'm not saying he's necessarily a statue in the pocket, like he's mobile, but that's not the pinnacle of his game. And we know that's a big cheat code when it comes to fantasy scoring. And I do think that's kind of translated overall to his fantasy production. He's ranked as a QB 10 or worse in fantasy points per game in 3 of his 4 NFL seasons. And you mentioned the health concerns, obviously a factor in that fantasy production. And I'm not going to call him injury prone because it seems like a lot of his injuries have just kind of been tough luck, but they're there and they keep occurring. So even if he cleans up the injuries, like it's just one of those kind of mismatches in terms of, maybe passing efficiency production versus like he needs probably a little bit more volume if he's going to be more of that pure pocket passer in order to reach those cruxes of cheat codes for all the rushing production he's not going to have.
And here's another reason why I'm not really into Joe Burrow as a top 10 dynasty QB is he hasn't really performed that way. Okay, you look at where he's finished among quarterbacks in points per game ranks. So even when he's on the field, it's not great as a rookie, as QB 18, 2021. That's the big season where the Bengals made it to the Super Bowl, finished as QB 10. 2022, he did finish as QB 4. Give it to him. That was a great season. And then last year, QB 25. And I know he was dealing with a calf injury for the first half of the season, but you look at that, and for the most part, it's, average to maybe slightly above average quarterback play. And as the weapons get worse, because they certainly will now that Burrow is on his second deal and the Bengals have to pay Jamar Chase, you're already seeing kind of the weapons decline. And we don't think T. Higgins is going to be there long term. I just have questions about how efficient this offense is going to be and whether it's going to translate to fantasy points. Again, I'm not saying that Joe Burrow is a bad quarterback. I still think he is one of the best quarterbacks that we have in the NFL. I just worry, like, is he ever going to be a quarterback who is going to be 4,800 yards, 38 touchdowns, and 4 rushing touchdowns? It's going to give you that kind of fantasy ceiling because I don't see it. I would just much rather gamble on the athletic quarterback that gives you a higher floor because of their rushing upside.
Yeah, and I think it also might, be a question of sort of how you want to structure, how you want to approach the quarterback position. Because obviously, if you're looking for safety at the quarterback position and you're not necessarily looking for the highest ceiling, but you want a guy that you know is going to be here in the league for the next 10 to 15 years because you want that kind of security, maybe you're going to value Joe Burrow a little bit more heavily. But, even cumulatively, we showed you his year over year ranks in terms of fantasy points per game. Cumulatively, dating back to his rookie season, averaged just under 19 fantasy points per game. That ranks as the QB 10 in that span overall, ranking behind guys that I can get at a much lower value, like a Dak Prescott, a Kyler Murray. Like, there are a lot of assets that, I might be able to invest in at a lower cost that are probably going to give me more fantasy production, even if it doesn't necessarily match what we're seeing on the field in terms of real life NFL quality quarterback play.
Yep. I will also mention, I feel like we're one mild injury away. For example, let's say that Joe Burrow has a high ankle sprain and he misses 3 games, right? Like something serious, but not serious enough to like cause him to miss the rest of the season. I feel like one more of those injuries, especially if it happens this year, is going to tank his value because people will look at, okay, hey, you didn't stay on the field in 2023 with the calf injury and then the hand injury. You had the knee injury as a rookie. You've been constantly banged up. How can I trust you to stay healthy for a 17-game schedule? I just think we're one injury away from his value absolutely tanking. I would rather get out now while he's still being valued as not only a top 10 dynasty quarterback, but a top 5 dynasty QB.
I'm going to rule this a fact.
Okay.
Marcus,
So
although
we have
like
2 facts and a
2
semi.
facts and I'm the only fool.
That's all right. It's fine. That one's debatable. So, all right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. We post videos every single day over there. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Again, remember, on tomorrow's show, we are breaking down Texas wide receiver Xavier Worthy. So tune in for that. Go follow Kate on Twitter at KateMajuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.